Hey everyone, this is Josiah from Grace Note Forge. So a while ago, I posted a quick time-lapse video of me 3D modeling a clef note necklace charm in Blender. Since then, I've been getting quite a few questions about how I went about doing that, so I thought I'd do a quick walkthrough of how I achieved this using Blender's custom bevel tools for jewelry modeling. And since I'm doing this video around Valentine's Day, I wanted to do a simple heart necklace design using these tools. So this is the sketch that I'm going to be going off of, and every now and then I'm going to be referencing back to it. I'm going to be using Blender version 2.91.2, but this feature can be found in Blender 2.9 as well. Alright, to start out, I'm just going to get rid of everything that's on the default page. Then, by hitting Shift A, I'm going to bring up my curves and just select a normal path. And to make everything just a little bit easier to see, I'm going to get rid of the floor and the grid. Then I can go into the front profile view by hitting 1. Now I'm going to hit Tab to bring us into edit mode. And then with everything selected, I'm going to hit R and just rotate this out a little bit. Now grabbing the tweak feature with select, I'm just going to start moving this curve into the general area that I want it to be. And with this uppermost vertice, I'm going to grab it and hit E on our keyboard to just extrude it along the path like we had in our example sketch. I'm going to curve this down and make that small loop that's in the center. Just bring it back up. And start to point this down as well. And we don't need to be too specific about where we're at this point. We're going to end up tweaking it again later on. Alright, so now that this is created, we can go over to the right to our curve options and scroll down and open up the geometry tab. And then in our bevel section, we're going to have 3 different options. So there's normal round, where you can see if I increase the depth, it'll make kind of like a normal tube along our curve. There's also the object option, which we're going to be using later on. And then the profile option, which I used in my clef note design video. And with this one, there's really a lot of freedom to go through and tweak the look to really get some custom shapes in your curve. You can see if I start pulling around these points in this graph to the right, I can really start building up some interesting shapes and kind of play around with the look that I'm going for. And if we click on this drop down, there's even a short list of presets that you can kind of play around with that has things like crown molding. And if you bump up the resolution just above the graph, you can really start to get a sense for the detail that can be achieved with these shapes. But for this design, we're just going to stick to the round feature. Make sure that our resolution is up to something around 32. And then also bump up our surface resolution. And I'm going to put a pretty high value because we're shooting for a pretty dense mesh. And before we do anything else, we want to make sure to fill the caps at the ends. That way we know we're going to have a solid mesh. It won't give us any problems during 3D printing. So going back into our front view by hitting 1, I'm actually going to extrude this just to make it a little bit thicker. Something around 0.25. Now going back to our selection box, I'm just going to go over these vertices that make up the loop and hit Alt S just to scale those in a bit. Now I'm just going to do the same with the ends of the heart and then kind of work my way around the curve. And at this point, it's really just going to be a matter of going back and forth and changing the vertice thickness to find the right flow that we want. You can see in between these 2 points, I'm going to select them and right click and just hit subdivide to add another vertice in here. And then kind of just start pulling stuff around to get the right look that I'm going for. Alright, so at this point, it's not really looking too bad, but it is kind of flat. So we're going to do a couple things to try to fix that and give it a little bit more depth. So what we're going to do is, just like it shows in our example sketch, I'm going to go through and start rotating out some of these curves and start giving it some dimension. So with these outermost vertices selected, I'm going to hit N, go over to my transform tab, and just change the tilt. And then along the curve, I'm just going to start doing the same thing with some of these connecting vertices, tilting them inward and in different directions to kind of make it feel like a little bit more of a ribbon and just help the flow of the piece in general. And then if you hold shift while adjusting this tilt slider, it gives you a little bit more control. Grab these last 2 ones, kind of curve them out just a little bit, and then do the same on the other side. And throughout this step, it's a good idea to kind of pan around the object to get a better feel for how these tilts look in relation to one another. See, that's not too bad. I'm gonna start curving these ones in as well. Make sure I'm going in the right direction. And then with this loop, I'm just gonna bring this kind of facing down. Maybe point this one in as well. So I want this shorter tail to kind of curve inward and connect with the other one. So what we're going to do is, by hitting 1 on our keyboard, going into front facing view, I'm just going to grab this vertice by hitting G, bring it in and kind of down. And that looks about right. So now that I've gone through and kind of adjusted the tilt in the positions that I want them to be, I'm just going to go through and use a tweak select to kind of adjust the profile to be where I want it again. Alright, so it's looking pretty good so far. The next thing that we're going to do is make a hoop that connects to this charm, and then design a decorative bail to go through it and hang from the necklace itself. So we're just going to start off by hiding this, and by hitting Shift A, I'm just going to do another path curve. Then by hitting 1 to get into front facing view, I'm going to hit Tab to get into edit mode. And this time I'm going to use the select box and make sure that proportional editing is turned on. Then I'm going to grab this center vertice, and by hitting G and then Z on our keyboard, I'm just going to move this up and use my scroll wheel to increase the influence. I'm going to bring these two in by hitting Scale and X. And move this one back up. And I'm just looking to make an arc like this. Then going into object mode, I'm going to unhide our charm and just move this arc into position. Might even scale it down a little. Alright, so that's about the shape of the connecting loop that I want. Now I'm going to re-hide our charm, create a circle, then by hitting 7 to go into top-down view, I'm going to hit Tab to go back into edit mode and make sure everything is selected. Scale this down a little. And then by selecting this vertice to the right, I'm going to hit G and then X to move it on the X plane. Now I'm going to select all 3 of these vertices, maybe scale them down, and then move them in. Something like that. Now going back to object mode, going to select our first arc that we made. Go down to our bevel options again and hit object. Then I'm just going to select this circle that we made. Now, it might not be in the right orientation. If we go back into edit mode, I'm going to hit A to select everything, N to bring up our transform options. And then I'm just going to rotate that inward 90 degrees. Make sure to fill the caps again. So now if we bring our charm back, I'm just going to move this into position, making sure that I'm in front facing view, and then adjust the scale until it feels about right. And if you want to change the actual thickness of this, you can grab this circle that we made earlier and just scale that down. I'm going to go in a side view by hitting 3. And just to see everything better, I'm going to hit Alt-Z. Then I'm going to move this back on the Y plane just so it's at the top curve of our charm. Alright, that's not bad. I'm going to bring it up a little bit more. Then I think what I want to do is make this top portion just a little bit thinner. So I'm going to grab it, hit Alt-S to bring it in, and then using proportional editing, I'm just going to adjust the influence of it. Maybe make these ones a little thicker as well. Grabbing this one that's sticking out, I'm going to hit G and then Z just to bring this one up. And that's looking pretty good. Alright, so before I turn these both into a mesh and then connect them together, I'm going to make sure this loop has a decently high resolution. Alright, now I'm just going to select both of these curves, right click, and convert them to mesh. Now I'm just going to select our loop, and then holding shift, I'm going to select our charm. And then going into our bool tools, I'm just going to hit union to make it one cohesive piece. This might take a second. And there we go. So now the only thing left to do is start working on our decorative bail. And we're going to use the same techniques that we did before to create the loop. So I'm going to start off by hiding our charm. Going to hit Shift A and make another circle. Then I'm going to rotate this on the Y plane 90 degrees. Hitting 3 to go into side profile view. I'm now going to hit Tab to go into edit mode. And with everything selected, I'm just going to scale this on the Z axis. Then I'm just going to select these middle two vertices and bring them up. And then this bottom vertice, I'm going to shift select the handlebars and then hit S to scale and scale them down in the Y axis. And we're going for a kind of upside down teardrop shape. So once that's created, we can go back into object mode, get it into the basic position that it's going to be in. And we can actually, we'll hide our other curve. We can hide our charm again. Then I'm going to create another circle that we're going to use for our decorative object. So I'm going to go into top-down view and just hide our curve for now. Hit Tab. I'm going to scale down the whole thing in the Y plane. Maybe scale these ones up in the X. Then I'm just going to create a couple subdivisions in between. So I'm going to grab this center one, hit G, and just move that down. And if I right click on this vertice, I can go down to set handle type and choose vector. That way I can move these handlebars individually. So I'm going to select this one, shift select the other, hit G and then Y. I just want this curve to be a little bit sharper. Might even scale these out a little bit more. Bring this up. And I'm just gonna adjust the handlebars on the outside vertices of these, and because they might be a little bit difficult to select both of them at the same time, I'm actually going to move them by typing in the values. Just gonna move this up on the y-axis 0.5, and then do the same for the other handlebar. Select G, Y, then 0.5. So that looks about right. I think I'm going to grab this center one, just move the whole thing up. Now going back into object mode, I'm going to unhide our loop that we created. Going to select it, and then going down to our bevel options, I'm going to hit object. Then I'm going to select this one. You can see it's in the wrong orientation just like it was before. So I'm going to hit tab, hit A to select everything. And then bringing up our transform, I'm just going to rotate that -90 degrees. Going back into object mode, I can select our object curve, scale this down to something more appropriate. And at this point, I'm just going to bump up the resolution on this piece as well. And just like before, I'm going to right click and convert this one to mesh. Now going into edit mode once again, going to hit 1 for front facing view. And then using the box select with proportional editing turned on, I'm going to switch proportional editing to linear and hit Alt-Z to get into X-ray mode. I'm just going to box select over some of the vertices at the very bottom. Hit S for scale, then X for the X-axis. And then using my mouse middle scroll wheel, I'm going to adjust the influence and just scale down the very bottom to get a taper. And that's looking pretty good so far. I'm just going to go into side profile and then kind of line this up to get an idea of where I want it to be. I might even move this down a little. I think I might make it actually just a little bit thinner. So I'm going to hit tab, go into front facing view again, Alt-Z to go into X-ray mode, hit S, and then the X plane, scale it in just a bit more. And that looks about right. Alright, so now what I want to work on is trying to smooth out some of this design at the bottom. So I'm going to hide everything else. And with our bale selected, I'm actually going to go into sculpt mode to do this. So making sure that our symmetry is selected. On the Y and Z planes, things got a little flipped around because we drew this design out on a different plane. But as long as you're seeing these 4 mirrored vertices at the bottom when you scroll around, it should be fine. So using the smooth brush, I'm just going to turn down the strength a bit. And then just using my mouse, I'm going to slowly start smoothing out some of this geometry and blending it in to our upper pattern. And the reason that I'm doing this is because I think that it helps the design to kind of change it up, but also because when I cast this piece in silver, I'm going to need to attach this bale around our loop on our charm. So I might end up cutting the bottom of it and then soldering it back together. And it's just going to be easier to blend out that solder joint if the surface is just a little bit smoother. So that looks pretty good right there. So as I said earlier, I'm going to try casting this design in 2 separate pieces, and I'm not sure yet if I'm going to use castable resin or if I'm going to try to make a mold for this piece. But either way, that'll be for a future video. Please like and subscribe if you gained anything out of this, and thank you for watching.